Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. You know that line. It lives somewhere in memory alongside things you learned before you could even read. Your favorite color, your mother's voice, the smell of a particular room in childhood. That is the kind of place Mary Poppins occupies. Not just a movie you saw, a movie that was already there, somehow, before you remember seeing it for the first time. On August 27, 1964, Walt Disney's Mary Poppins opened in theaters across America. Julie Andrews descended from the sky above Cherry Tree Lane and changed cinema history with her very first film appearance. Dick Van Dyke danced with penguins. The Banks children flew above London rooftops. And something Walt Disney had spent over 2 decades fighting to bring to the screen finally became one of the most beloved films ever made. But behind that practically perfect surface, the real story is stranger and messier than the film suggests. There was a writer who despised nearly every frame of it, casting choices that never happened and could have changed everything. Songs written before the movie even had legal permission to exist. And a premiere night that ended in tears nobody expected, for reasons nobody hoped for. Today Before TV and Cinema is opening the carpet bag for 15 untold secrets and hidden facts about Mary Poppins. Hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into the movies that shaped the world we grew up in. Let's go. Number 1. 20 years to get the rights. Walt Disney first learned about P.L. Travers' Mary Poppins books in the late 1930s, when his daughters told him the stories of the magical British nanny. He wrote to Travers asking for the film rights. She said no. He asked again. No again. He kept asking, across years and then across decades, and she kept refusing. Travers was fiercely protective of her creation, written in 1934, and she was genuinely convinced Disney, with his reputation for sentimentalizing everything and adding cheerful musical numbers to whatever he touched, was exactly the wrong man to touch her book. She didn't trust him and didn't want his version of her character anywhere near a movie screen. Disney tried again in 1959 with a new offer, and this time she was more receptive, partly because the books hadn't been as commercially active as she might have wished. He agreed to pay her $750,000, let her serve as a consultant, and gave her script approval over the production. What he did not give her was final editing control, and he reserved that for himself. That single distinction between being consulted and having actual power would eventually explode into one of the most bitter premiere nights in Hollywood history. Mary Poppins reached the screen because one man refused, across 20 years of near constant rejection, to stop believing it was worth making. Number 2, Disney waited for her. Walt Disney saw Julie Andrews on Broadway in Camelot, watched her play Queen Guinevere, and knew instantly she was his Mary Poppins. He approached her about the role. Andrews was interested, but she had 2 complications standing in the way. The first was that she was pregnant. The second was that she desperately wanted the film role of Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady, a part she had originated on stage and felt she had a genuine claim to reprising on screen. Disney's answer to the pregnancy was simple. He would wait. Production would be scheduled around her delivery, the role held for her. That kind of patience for an actress who had never made a single film before was almost unheard of in Hollywood. The My Fair Lady question wasn't his to solve. Warner Brothers chief Jack Warner decided Andrews wasn't a big enough film star and gave the role to Audrey Hepburn instead. That rejection freed Andrews completely. She accepted Disney's offer, gave birth to her daughter Emma in November 1963, and reported to the Disney lot 6 weeks later to begin one of the most celebrated film debuts in Hollywood history. Number 3, the Oscar speech revenge. At the 1965 Academy Awards, Mary Poppins and My Fair Lady collided head-on, both nominated for Best Picture, with both leading actresses having given acclaimed performances in their respective films. The Academy didn't even nominate Audrey Hepburn for Best Actress, since her singing had been dubbed throughout the film, a fact the industry was well aware of. Julie Andrews won it instead, for her very first film role of any kind, going from being rejected by Warner Brothers as insufficiently famous to winning the highest individual honor in cinema within the space of a single year. In her acceptance speech, after warmly thanking the people who made the film possible, Andrews added one final line. She thanked, she said, the man who had made all of this possible in the first place, Mr. Jack Warner.
Finally, my thanks to a man who made a wonderful movie and who made all this possible in the first place, Mr. Jack Warner.
The industry understood it immediately. The man who had rejected her as insufficiently famous had accidentally handed her an Oscar by doing so. It remains one of the most elegant, controlled acts of score settling in Academy Award history, delivered with a smile that said everything without saying anything unforgivable. Number 4. Elvis was almost Bert. Walt Disney genuinely wanted Elvis Presley to play Bert the Chimney Sweep. Presley was the biggest entertainment star in America in the early 1960s, with real musical film experience and the physical charm the role demanded. The obstacle wasn't Elvis himself. It was his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, who ran every detail of Presley's career with an iron grip. Parker had one unbendable rule. Elvis never appeared in a film without top billing. In Mary Poppins, that title clearly belonged to Mary. Parker turned the offer down on his client's behalf, and Elvis never got the chance to decide for himself whether he wanted to dance with animated penguins. Number 5. The actors considered first. With Presley ruled out, the list of names considered for Bert reads like a roll call of mid-century Hollywood leading men: Cary Grant, Fred Astaire, Danny Kaye, Bob Denver, Adam West, Sean Connery, even Andy Griffith. Grant was Disney's personal favorite, a man with an easy physical grace and comedic timing that would have brought something genuinely different to Bert's relationship with Mary. Astaire's casting would have turned the film's dance sequences into its absolute center, technically extraordinary, but very different in tone from the warm, slightly bumbling Bert audiences eventually got. P.L. Travers, who wanted an all-British cast, pushed for Laurence Olivier, Rex Harrison, or Peter Sellers. Dick Van Dyke got the role almost by accident, not through any formal screen test. Disney had read an interview where Van Dyke said his dream was to work on a Disney film someday. Then, during a costume fitting, Disney watched him spontaneously improvise a comedy bit for the crew, playing an old man struggling with a single step down, and knew immediately the role was his. Van Dyke himself has said for decades that he has no idea why he was cast, and that he believed British actors would have done the job better. Number 6. An Irish Cockney coach. Van Dyke's Cockney accent in the finished film is famously, cheerfully terrible.
Mavis and Sybil have ways that are winning, and Prudence and Gwendolyn set you out spinning.
So wrong that he later apologized for it publicly at a BAFTA ceremony, calling it the most atrocious Cockney in film history. Part of the reason, his dialect coach, a man named Pat Mahoney, was Irish, and his own Cockney wasn't significantly better than what he was attempting to teach.
Them what sings chim chim chiree chim chiroo.
Somehow, on a set with an almost entirely British crew, who knew exactly what real Cockney sounded like, nobody corrected him.
Do I ask of you, but me cap would be glad of a copper or two.
The accent went straight into the film untouched. Van Dyke later joked that he blamed Julie Andrews as much as anyone, since she found the performance too committed and joyful to object to. Decades later, at that BAFTA ceremony, the audience laughed warmly as he formally apologized. By then, the accent had already become a permanent, beloved part of the film's charm. Number 7. Tears at the premiere. Walt Disney did not invite P.L. Travers to the premiere of Mary Poppins, likely because the production had endured years of her objections, her resistance to the animated sequences, and her frustration with the American interpretation of her English character. She pressed a studio executive until he relented, and she got herself in anyway, sitting in the theater to watch what Disney had made of her creation. She cried during the screening, but not out of joy, and not the way the 2013 film Saving Mr. Banks later suggested. The animated sequence she had fought against throughout production was still there. The time period had been shifted. The house the Banks family lived in was wrong. Mary Poppins herself felt too warm, too pretty, too American, stripped of the precise and slightly imperious quality Travers had written into the books. After the screening, she tracked down Disney at the after-party and told him directly the animation had to be cut. He had made his position clear from the beginning. Once the film was finished, he was making no more changes. He said no. Travers vowed that night never to work with him again, and she kept that promise for the rest of her life, even when Disney later approached her about sequel possibilities. Number 8. Songs before the rights. Most film productions secure the rights to their source material before writing a single song. This one didn't. Walt Disney set brothers Richard and Robert Sherman to work composing the score in 1961, years before the rights to the Mary Poppins books were even fully locked down. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
It's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Let's go fly a kite. A spoonful of sugar.
For a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
Chim, chim, cherry.
And then what sings chim, chim, chiree, chim, chiroo?
The Sherman brothers wrote all of it while Disney was still negotiating with Travers for permission to make the film at all. By the time the deal finally closed, the brothers had already been working for roughly 2.5 years on a movie that technically didn't yet have legal permission to exist. The confidence this required is almost hard to quantify. Disney was investing real creative resources and the considerable talents of two gifted songwriters into a project he did not yet have legal permission to make. It paid off. Chim Chim Cherry won the Oscar for Best Original Song, and the Sherman Brothers' full score won Best Music for songs written on pure faith before there was any guaranteed film to put them in. Quick pause right here. What's your single favorite moment in Mary Poppins? The rooftop dance? The tea party on the ceiling? The chalk drawing world? Drop your answer in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe to Before TV and Cinema for more deep dives like this one. We're back. Number 9, Walt's secret favorite song. Everyone assumes Walt Disney's favorite song from the film was one of the big showstoppers. It wasn't. His favorite song from any film he ever made, he said specifically, was the quiet, easily overlooked Feed the Birds.
Feed the birds, that's what.
It's the song Mary sings about an old woman selling breadcrumbs for tuppence a bag outside St. Paul's Cathedral, so passers-by can feed the pigeons. It's gentle and unhurried, with no big ending and no sing-along chorus. By every conventional measure, the least spectacular song in a film full of spectacular songs. Richard Sherman recalled that every Friday afternoon during production, Disney would stop by their office and ask for a private piano performance of it. Not a run-through for production purposes, just for himself, then quietly leave. Week after week, across the entire production, that was the song he came back to. Sherman said Disney explained it simply. The song was about small kindnesses mattering. Tuppence for the birds was enough. That was the message he believed the whole film was really built around, underneath all the magic, the dancing penguins, and the invented words. Number 10, 13 nominations, 1 loss. Mary Poppins picked up 13 Academy Award nominations, the most of any Disney film at the time, and won 5, including Best Actress for Andrews, Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, Best Original Song, and Best Visual Effects. 13 nominations and 5 wins was an extraordinary result for any film, let alone a Disney studio production. But Best Picture went to My Fair Lady, the very film that had rejected Andrews for its lead role in the first place, adapted from the same stage production she had originated on Broadway. My Fair Lady also won Best Director for George Cukor. Audrey Hepburn, whose singing had been dubbed, wasn't even nominated for Best Actress. The woman once considered not famous enough for that part won the Oscar for the film she made instead. The symmetry of that single night, 2 films and 2 actresses tied together by one casting decision, is almost too precise to be an accident. Number 11, never-before-seen animation. Blending live actors with hand-drawn animation the way Mary Poppins did had never been achieved at this level before. Previous Disney productions had attempted the combination, but the seams always showed. Disney brought in visual effects specialist Petros Vlahos and animation pioneer Ub Iwerks, who co-created Mickey Mouse with Disney decades earlier, to modify camera technology using a refined sodium vapor process and a specially designed prism that separated actors from backgrounds with unprecedented precision. The result was the animated sequences audiences saw in 1964. The chalk drawing world, the horse race, Dick Van Dyke dancing alongside animated penguins with a physical naturalness no film had managed before. The technology developed for this film went on to influence visual effects in Hollywood for years afterward. Ironically, This was the exact sequence P.L. Travers fought hardest to have removed entirely from the finished film. Number 12. Julie's terrifying first film. Julie Andrews had years of Broadway experience, originating roles in My Fair Lady and Camelot, but she had never stood in front of a film camera in her life. From the outside, her performance looks like someone who had been making films forever. Every choice precise, every musical moment landing exactly where it needed to. The camera distances, the eye lines, the entirely different technical language of filmmaking, none of it was familiar to her. By her own account, she was genuinely scared. Not the manageable nervous energy experienced performers describe, but real fear, arriving on set only 6 weeks after giving birth, with zero film experience, needing to figure out very quickly how any of this worked. She figured it out well enough to win the Academy Award for Best Actress and establish herself as one of the defining screen presences of the 1960s. Child actors on set, Karen Dautrice and Matthew Garber, later recalled being stunned by the contrast between the composed, precise Andrews they saw on screen and the swearing, cigarette-smoking Andrews they saw between takes. She was fully human behind the practically perfect performance. Number 13. Banned from her own premiere. During production, P.L. Travers fought Disney on nearly everything. She had script approval and used it aggressively. She objected to the animated sequences on principle and repeatedly dismissed the Sherman Brothers song so bluntly that Richard Sherman later said she simply didn't care about their feelings and banned the color red from the entire production, an edict the art department had to work around. She insisted there be no hint of romance between Mary and Bert and objected to nearly every casting choice she hadn't personally approved. Disney accommodated her where he could and held firm where he couldn't. When Travers realized her script approval didn't extend to the final cut, the relationship deteriorated further. When the film was finished, he simply didn't invite her to the premiere. Whether that was practical distance or plain frustration, the result was the same. Travers found out anyway, cornered a Disney executive, pushed her way in, and watched the finished film for the very first time sitting in that theater. Number 14. The Umbrella's Hidden Voice. Mary's talking, parrot-headed umbrella has a voice all its own.
That's gratitude for you. Didn't even say goodbye.
Commenting on events and functioning almost like a confidant for Mary in the moments when she's alone. That voice belongs to David Tomlinson, the same actor who plays Mr. Banks, the uptight, emotionally closed-off father Mary is sent to change.
Yes, it's done. It's all done.
Well, where is she?
Most audiences never notice both voices belong to the same performer, since the two characters sit at such different points in the story. Mr. Banks is the obstacle, the figure of resistance. The umbrella is Mary's quiet companion and supporter. Tomlinson performed both roles without any particular public acknowledgement that they were the same voice. It's a small, elegant joke buried in the film. The person resisting Mary Poppins in one form is, in another form, quietly on her side all along. Sometimes the right voice was already in the house. Number 15. The Last Great Triumph. Mary Poppins became the highest-grossing film of 1964 and the single biggest commercial success of Walt Disney's entire career. 13 Oscar nominations, 5 wins, and a Best Actress statue for a total screen newcomer. At the Academy Awards the following April, Disney sat in that theater and watched his studio win on the biggest night in Hollywood, the crowning commercial achievement of everything he had built. Walt Disney was diagnosed with lung cancer in late 1966 and died that December, at 65 years old. The 2 years between the film's release and his death saw new projects begin, including the early planning of Walt Disney World and films that would only be completed after he was gone. But Mary Poppins remained the last great triumph he lived to see fully completed, celebrated, and embraced by the entire world. He had promised his daughters he would make this film. It took him 20 years of persistence with no guaranteed ending. When it finally arrived, it won 5 Oscars, saved a woman's premiere night from going entirely as she hoped, gave Julie Andrews her first film and her first award, and became something generation after generation of children have discovered as if for the very first time. And there you have it, 15 untold secrets and hidden facts about Mary Poppins. Which one surprised you most? Which one is sending you straight back to rewatch the film? Drop it in the comments below. Hit like if this one meant something to you, and subscribe to Before TV and Cinema for more deep dives into the movies that became part of who we are. Share this one with someone who still can't spell supercalifragilisticexpialidocious on the first try.